Canada is deepening its trading relationship with India, with both countries committing to reaching a free trade deal by the end of the year.
This is not merely the renewal of a relationship. It is the expansion of a valued partnership as India seeks access to critical minerals for its manufacturing, its clean tech, and its nuclear plans. Canada's resource base and world-leading companies position it as a strategic partner.
Prime Minister Mark Carney signed a series of multi-million-dollar deals with his Indian counterpart, including a deal to supply Canadian uranium to India. All this while new details emerge about a murder on Canadian soil. Reporting from the Globe and Mail alleges Canadian officials have seen evidence that links Indian consular staff operating in Vancouver to the assassination of a Sikh activist. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand was asked today about this.
There is agreement between Canada and India to continue to ensure the safety and security of the Canadian population, and we need to be at the table. We need to engage. We need to have these diplomatic conversations in order to make progress of this sort.
Vina Nadjibulla is the Vice President, Research and Strategy at the Asia-Pacific Foundation of Canada. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you so much, Katie.
I want to start by asking, Canada is committing to significantly deepen ties with trade ties with India. What do you make of this moment?
Yeah, so it's really been a tale of two different visits. If you look from a perspective of what's been happening in Mumbai and New Delhi in the last 2 days, you're not only seeing a reset, but a deepening of partnership, expansion of partnership, a conversation about a whole new strategic partnership on energy, CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, a real warm, forward-looking agenda. And if you look at the coverage of the visit here in Canada, we're still talking about foreign interference, we're still talking about transnational repression. There's still quite a bit of hesitation and caution, whereas Prime Minister Carney said that his visit marked a turning point, that this was going to be the end of the challenging period and the beginning of a new ambitious partnership. Well, in Canada, it still feels like we're still not yet turning the page on the really difficult issue. So my main takeaway is that now Prime Minister Carney will need to bring these two narratives together. He's going to have to bridge the enormous economic potential that he sees in the relationship with India and how critical that is for Canada's economic resilience with the remaining challenges and the hesitation that exists here in Canada about deeper relations with India.
I do want to talk about the economic sort of benefits and what could be at stake here in just a moment, but because you did sort of bring this up, the concerns that Canadians have when it does come to deepening ties in this moment with the government of Narendra Modi. Right now there is an investigation underway. It has not, gone through the entire judicial process, but there are still significant allegations about the Indian government's involvement with a murder on Canadian soil. Why should Canada deepen its ties when we don't have concrete answers in this moment?
Yeah, so Prime Minister Carney and his government essentially are saying that there is a two-track process, that there is a security and law enforcement process that is creating dialogue and is getting some progress and accountability on the part of India, as well as a criminal process that's ongoing in British Columbia. And then there is a track of this economic, and beyond economic, it's actually economic technology defense partnership that needs to move forward with India, given the significance of India to our diversification agenda, to Canada's economic resilience, and to Canada's prosperity moving forward. So I think the government believes that the two things can happen in parallel, that in fact they're mutually reinforcing. They would argue that in the last few months there has been more cooperation from India, including through the visit of their national security advisor here in February, than there had been in the previous 2 years. So I think to them this can happen simultaneously, and that in the current global environment, given that we need to diversify our over-reliance on the US, they feel that we don't have a luxury of not engaging with India, which is the fourth largest economy, and whose economy is really complementary to ours. In other words, they need energy, they need food, they need technological partnerships and investments, all the things that Canada brings to the table.
You talked about those sectors there. There were a whole series of announcements that Prime Minister Mark Carney took part in during this trip. What stands out to you? What are the sectors that you see as the winners in this moment for Canada?
Yeah, so energy was definitely front and center. Both conventional energy in terms of sale of potential crude as well as LNG, as well as clean energy, so nuclear, renewables. I mean, there's a lot of language on energy, a strategic partnership. There will be another visit by the Indian delegation to Canada in the summertime. There will be a conference on renewable later in 2026 as well. So I think energy is very much front and center. And of course, that was underscored by what happened in the Middle East, because India is very dependent on supplies from the Middle East and has basically a single point of failure with the Hormuz Strait. So to get predictable and reliable energy from Canada is very much in India's interest. And of course, Canada wants to sell more energy. So you'll be hearing a lot about energy, including critical minerals. Second area would be on technology and innovation. So a lot of conversation about AI, quantum, including applications of AI in sectors like defense and space. So I think what was surprising to many of us was to see Minister McGuinty, our defense minister, on the trip and hear about it, an announcement of a defense dialogue. And when Prime Minister Modi introduced the defense dialogue, he actually spoke about it as marking the maturity and the trust in the relationship, which again, going back to that idea of two different narratives, that's certainly not how things were being perceived here the last 2 days.
No, do you think that the skepticism and the concern here in Canada is justified?
I mean, I think given everything that we've heard over the last 2 years, absolutely. And in fact, our foundation, we just did a survey together with Angus Reid Institute, and majority of Canadians are actually quite pragmatic. They support Prime Minister Carney's visit. They feel like it was the right time to go. But at the same time, they're very worried about moving too quickly. So moving too quickly on the CEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or sort of expanding partnerships into areas like defense. So I think there's a lot of work that the government still needs to do in communicating clearly what kind of progress has occurred on the law enforcement and security track, and why Canada needs to partner with India. Because frankly, our understanding of India is very limited. Like, majority of Canadians don't fully understand the transformation that's happening in India right now, in terms of its innovation, in terms of its growth, in terms of the talent of its people. And I think Prime Minister Carney, when you listen to his speeches during his visit in Mumbai and New Delhi, he gets that. And he presents sort of a long-term partnership between Canada and India, kind of a 20-year horizon that he believes will benefit Canada and is very much in the interests of India as well.
Trade continues to be a focus for the Prime Minister as he heads on this next stop. What are you looking for as Prime Minister Carney rounds out this trip?
Yes, so he's now on his way to Australia. And of course, I think the atmosphere in Australia is going to be much friendlier. This is an ally, Five Eyes ally for Canada. And the focus is going to be on strategic alignment, on defense and security partnerships, getting on the same page on issues like critical minerals, because historically we've been quite competitive in that space because we are both resource-rich and exporting nations when it comes to a lot of those natural resources. So I think really putting the spotlight on the relationship, what is possible in defense and security, and what we can do together if we pull our resources around critical minerals, for instance, joint stockpiling, or really coordinating our policies so that we're not duplicating and sort of doing the same things. I think from there, he goes to Japan, another very strong ally and partner in the Indo-Pacific. And there, I think it would be really critical for the Prime Minister to articulate his vision for the Indo-Pacific and how he sort of sees Canada continues to be involved in the area. I think in general, Katie, this visit is really quite remarkable because it hits the three powerhouses of the Indo-Pacific: India, Japan, Australia. They're incidentally members of the Quad with the US, right? So, and for Canada, they're quite critical in terms of how we want to show up in the region, both for our prosperity, but also for our security.
All right, we'll leave the conversation there for now. Thank you very much, Vina Nadjibulla, the Vice President, Research and Strategy at the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada.
Thank you.